Hi, Jeff Denny again, Creative Home Buying Solutions. I'm going to go over now the foreclosure process as far as everything that I know about it. I find that a lot of people that we talk to are in a panic. They have no idea how long anything takes, what's the process, what's really going on. I've been doing this over 20 years, bought several hundred houses. A lot of those have been in foreclosures or sheriff sales. I feel like I know the process pretty darn well. Some of those have been short sales also. So first off, disclosure, this is not legal or financial advice. Use all this information at your own risk. It's strictly educational. Okay, so the process really started on a foreclosure the day that you bought the house. You signed some documents. So I'm going to go through the whole process on here. Really, the first thing, the document that was important was a deed. Okay, the deed would have been signed by the previous owner that you bought the house off of. It would have been signed at the bottom by him. And that would give you ownership to the house, just like a title to a car would, okay? I find that some people think that the banks already own their house, and they don't. You own the house, okay? Unless you've deeded it to somebody else, or unless it's already completed a sheriff sale where an attorney or where the judge has ordered the sheriff to issue a new deed to somebody else by court order, you still own the house. Okay, the next thing that you would have signed at closing when you bought the house was a promissory note. Promissory note would have been the paperwork. It would have been a page or two that would have said what your interest rate was, what your payment is, what the terms of repayment are, what your late fee is. That's called a promissory note. It's a promise to pay. Okay. Then the next thing is, the important document would have been a mortgage that you would have signed, which is basically, it's called a lien on your property, on your deed. So what a mortgage does is it says, if I don't pay on the promissory note, then Mr. Banker, since you have the mortgage, which is a lien on my deed, you can approach the courts and try to foreclose and have a judge give you the deed. Okay? So that's the three important documents that you really had going. So when you're getting foreclosed on, the banker's basically going to the judge and saying, hey, we have a mortgage and we want to foreclose so that we can get the deed from you, judge, so that we then own the property. So so you still own the property. That's the important thing. Okay, the next thing is a timeline. The average foreclosure in Ohio takes 12 months from the time that you stop paying. So now that's just average. It certainly could go quicker than that. If you have a good attorney that can fight a lot of stuff, it could go longer. I mean, some foreclosures have went years. Some might be done in 3 months if you don't argue about the stuff. So, if you just don't ignore everything, basically, and the bank's attorneys are able to quickly shove it through. So, and the way that normally works is you make one late payment, they're going to send you a little reminder. 2 payments, they send you a firm letter. 3 payments, they're going to probably start foreclosure. So you get 3 payments behind. That's when they usually start the foreclosure process. And what a foreclosure process is the bank's attorney basically prepares a document. It's called a complaint, and they submit it to the court that says, hey, this person has not made this payment. We have a mortgage and we want to foreclose. You will receive a copy of that. It has to be served to you. Okay, so probably a sheriff's going to come out and give you that paper. I believe the initial one has to be served by a sheriff. I'm not 100% sure of that. Sometimes it can be a servicing company, not necessarily a sheriff, but they have to serve you those papers as long as they can find you. If they can't find you, then sometimes they have to serve by publication, where they have to put in the paper that they're foreclosing on you. That's your public notice that you're being served. Okay? So now you get a complaint in the mail. Everything that the court gets, you're going to get a copy of. So it's nothing that's done behind your back. You'll get this complaint, and you may have already gotten it, and it's basically going to say you didn't pay and they want to foreclose. Now, I recommend the first thing you do is get an attorney, because you usually have, I think it's about 28 days to answer that complaint, to basically type up and give a defense to the court of, here's why I don't owe the money, or I disagree with these charges, these charges, these charges. And that's very difficult to do by yourself. I would definitely get an attorney. And normally, if you don't answer the complaint, what's going to happen is after that 28 days expires, then the bank's attorney is going to then approach the court and say, Your Honor, we issued the complaint to them. They have not answered. So by default, they're claiming that they're guilty of those charges, that they didn't make the payments. So what they're going to ask the court for is a default judgment. Basically, they're kind of skip the whole trial process because you didn't answer this complaint. And there's a good chance that the judge is going to find in the bank's favor if you did not answer the complaint, because you're not disputing anything. So if they get a default judgment, then it goes very quick after that. Okay, so if you have an attorney and you fight it, well, then it's going to be scheduled for trial, and that's going to be, you know, a process. They've got to get on the calendar and things like that. It could take weeks to get in there. The trial itself could take weeks. So the other thing is, a foreclosure is not a criminal case. It is a civil case. A lot of people think that they're going to go to jail or something, and that's not the case. This is just a dispute over money. I guess similar to a traffic ticket, let's say. You know, a judge is going to have to decide, but you're not criminally going to jail, and you're not going to be in any big trouble. I mean, if there was fraud, they could maybe say there's some kind of bank fraud, which would be a separate charge, but the foreclosure itself is really just a judgment trying to get money. Nothing to do with criminal, okay? So let's say you finally go to trial, and the judge does say you didn't make your payments, and they find in favor of the bank. So the bank's basically wins the case. Okay, at that point, what the judge is going to do is he's going to order the sheriff to get the home appraised. And what that entails is the sheriff usually has, at random, picks 3 realtors or real estate brokers in your area. They all climb in the back of the sheriff cruiser, and they go around and they drive by your house along with other ones that are being foreclosed, and they say, well, I think it's worth $60,000. What do you think? 60 sounds good. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now, they may knock and ask to come in. You don't necessarily have to let them in, as far as I know, unless they had a warrant, which they don't. I mean, check with your attorney on that, but they're going to appraise it one way or the other. They're going to walk around the property, or they're just going to drive by or something, and that's going to be kind of the established value. Those values can vary greatly, and I don't find them to be accurate at all. I don't know how you can appraise something without not even going in, but that's the way the system works. Then what the sheriff has to do is he has to advertise that property in the local paper, the biggest one in circulation, for 6 weeks. That's to give everybody notice that the sheriff's sale is coming up and things, okay? So they'll set the sheriff's date in that ad, okay? And now we get to the sheriff's date, okay? Now you show up the sheriff's sale at the local courthouse. Nothing fancy. The sheriff auctions it off. He'll ask for initial bid. You know, he'll keep raising the price, similar to an auctioneer. And at some point, somebody's going to end up with the property. Now, the odd thing is that the bank can bid just like an individual. So, and I find probably 95% of the time that the banks actually buy back the property. And sometimes they have PMI insurance or some kind of mortgage insurance that they're trying to collect on. You never can really make heads or tails of why they're buying some of these properties back. But a lot of times the bank will buy them back. Okay, so even at that point, you still own the property and could still be occupying the property even. Okay? Now, let's say somebody successfully bids, whether it's the bank or not. They normally have to put 10% down the day of the sale. So if it was a $70,000 house it sold for was the bid, they'd have to put $7,000 down and give a check to the sheriff for $7,000. Then the sheriff's going to have to fill out some forms to resubmit to the court along with your check, and we'll submit that back to the judge. And this could take several weeks to a month, and that's called a confirmation process. Basically what the judge is going to do is he's going to take a look at all this paperwork and review the case and make sure it was all done legally correct. Basically to protect your rights and make sure that it was done correctly. Now, if he says everything was done correctly, then at that point, and this could be up to 30 days or possibly even a little longer after the sheriff's sale, could be a little sooner, then the judge is going to confirm the sale. Okay, he's confirming the sale. Now what he's saying is it's all done correctly. Now the next thing he's going to order the sheriffs to do is, I want you to prepare a sheriff's deed to the new owner. I want you to call the new owner to come in and give the balance of the money, and I want you to give him the deed. At that point, the confirmation, once it's confirmed, it's usually pretty much a done deal. And when the sheriff gives him the deed, the new owner owns it. He's gotten the deeds, the same as what you did, only it came from the sheriff through a court order. So now he is the owner because he has the deed. Okay. Now at that point, if you haven't moved out, normally you have to go through a foreclosure process, but a lot of times the judge will do or not a foreclosure, an eviction process, sorry. But a lot of times the judge will give the right of possession to the new owner at the same time he does the confirmation of sale. So at that point, a lot of times they might try to give you like 10 days to move out after that. And if you don't move out, you're trespassing, and what they'll do is they'll come out with the sheriff, they'll move your stuff out to the curb, they'll lock the house, and they'll say if you go back in, you're trespassing because it's no longer your property. So there is a period of time here in which you own the property, and by getting an attorney to kind of protect some of your rights and slow this process down, you might have some options, which is a short sale was definitely one of those options. So obviously the closer you get to the sheriff's sale, the less options that you have. Also, if you don't get an attorney to answer these complaints, the process is going to go very, very quickly. So the other thing is, now here's kind of a slap in the face in my opinion. Let's say the bank buys it back. Let's say that you originally paid $100,000 for this house. And let's say the sheriff comes out, they can't really do an actual appraisal, and they say, oh, we think it's worth 80, okay? Which isn't uncommon for it to appraise for less than what you paid for it at a sheriff's sale appraisal. So then it's 80, and let's say 2/3 of that bid, which is the minimum bid at a sheriff's sale in Ohio, 2/3, let's say it's 50,000 just to keep it easy, okay? And the bank shows up, and nobody else shows up to bid on your property, and the bank buys it back for 50,000. Okay, here's the real slap in the face, in my opinion. What the banks can do is they can go back to the court after the foreclosure is all the way done and they own the property, and they can say, Your Honor, they borrowed $100,000 on this promissory note that they said they would pay back with late fees and attorney fees if we had to foreclose. So you might owe 110 at this point. And when we foreclosed on the mortgage and resold the property, or didn't resell the property, when we bought the property basically at sheriff's sale because there was no other buyers, we bought it for 50. So the difference of that would be $60,000 that they still owe. It's called a deficiency judgment, and they can get a deficiency judgment for the difference between what your house sold at sheriff's sale, whether it's sold to an individual or sold back to the bank, and what you originally promised to pay with all your late fees and attorney fees. So even after the sheriff's sale, you could be on the hook for a deficiency judgment. Now, one of the good things about a short sale is if you get started now and you get actually a workable solution, is the bank is going to accept the short sale offer as full payoff. So there's no chance of a deficiency judgment if you let it go all the way through foreclosure. So that's one of the big benefits of tackling the problem right now. Also, when they get a deficiency judgment, the next step is probably going to be that they're going to garnish your wages or try to attempt to collect on that. Now, this is after you've lost a house, okay? Another problem is the banks can send a 1099 to the IRS for the difference of that. So your deficiency judgment, let's say, was $60,000 in that example, and the bank, let's say they can't collect on it, they can send a 1099 to the IRS stating that that was income to you. Basically, they gave you $100,000 and they didn't get back as much, so the difference are going to count as income. So that creates problems with the IRS. So that's another big concern that is going to have to be taken care of one way or another. Another thing that I run into a lot of times is people think that once the foreclosure is over, they're good for a home loan. Your credit is going to be screwed up for at least 3 years, even if you rebuild it. Most likely in the future, you're probably going to get some kind of either government FHA or some kind of government loan for a house, or even a local bank, it doesn't matter. They're going to want to see a foreclosure to be 2 to 3 years, most likely 3 years behind you, before you can buy another one. So these are all problems that you're going to run into, and that's kind of the process of a foreclosure. If you have any specific questions, you can definitely call me and I'll try to help you as best I can, but I recommend you get an attorney to answer your complete at least, and he can also answer any questions you have. And I hope that you will watch the rest of these videos because I think they'll be worth your time.